Once upon a time, in a kingdom filled with sunshine and laughter, there lived a king who had 7 wonderful children. He had 6 strong sons and 1 gentle daughter. He loved them all more than anything in his entire kingdom. He treasured them more than his golden crown or his grand castle. The king was a good father, and his children grew up happy and kind, their days filled with stories, games, and the warmth of family love. Their bond was a beautiful thing to see, a perfect circle of affection that nothing, it seemed, could ever break. They were a truly happy family, living a life that felt like a fairy tale itself, unaware of the shadows that sometimes lurk just beyond the edge of the light. The king was a great hunter, and he often ventured into the vast, mysterious forest that bordered his lands. This forest was no ordinary place. It was ancient and deep, filled with trees that seemed to touch the sky and whispers that danced on the wind. People said the forest was enchanted, a place where magic was real and anything could happen. The king knew the stories, but he was a brave man and felt at home among the tall trees and winding paths. He loved the quiet of the woods, the thrill of the chase, and the feeling of being close to nature's wild heart. He never imagined that this beloved forest held a secret that would change his life and the lives of his precious children forever. The princess, the king's only daughter, was as lovely as a spring morning. She had a kind heart and a gentle spirit. She loved her 6 older brothers with all her being. They were her protectors, her playmates, and her best friends. They would spend hours together in the castle gardens, their laughter echoing through the halls. The brothers adored their little sister, always watching over her and making sure she was safe and happy. Their love for each other was the strongest magic in the kingdom, a pure and unbreakable connection that was a source of great joy for everyone who knew them. It was a love that would soon be tested in the most difficult way imaginable. This perfect life, however, was about to face a great challenge. The story of this family is not just about kings and princesses living in a beautiful castle. It is a story about incredible bravery and the amazing power of love. It shows us that even when things seem very dark and scary, hope can still shine through. It's a tale that reminds us that the promises we make to those we love are important, and that true courage means never giving up, no matter how hard the journey becomes. This is the story of a sister who would do anything to save her brothers, a story of magic, sacrifice, and the enduring strength of family. One day, the king went hunting deep within the enchanted forest, farther than he had ever gone before. He followed a magnificent white deer, drawn by its beauty and grace. The path twisted and turned, leading him into the heart of the woods where the trees grew thick and the sunlight struggled to reach the ground. Suddenly he realized he was lost. The familiar trails had vanished, and every direction looked the same. The sun began to set, casting long, spooky shadows all around him. The king, usually so fearless, felt a shiver of unease. He called out, but only the echo of his own voice answered him, a lonely sound in the vast, silent wilderness of the forest. As darkness fell completely, a single light flickered in the distance. Hopeful, the king made his way towards it. He soon came to a small, strange-looking hut. An old woman with sharp eyes and a crooked smile stood in the doorway. The king did not know it, but this was no ordinary old woman. She was a powerful and cunning witch who knew the forest's darkest secrets. She offered him a way out of the woods, a path back to his kingdom and his beloved children. But her help came with a terrible price. She told the king that he could only leave if he promised to marry her beautiful daughter. The king was filled with dread. He did not want to marry a stranger, especially the daughter of this mysterious old woman. His heart longed to be back in his own castle, safe with his 7 children. He thought of their faces, their laughter, and the love they shared. The fear of never seeing them again was greater than his fear of the witch. He felt trapped with no other choice before him. So with a heavy heart and a mind full of worry, the king agreed to the witch's demand. He made the promise, hoping that somehow everything would turn out all right, not knowing the true darkness he had just invited into his life. The witch kept her word and showed the king the path back to his castle. But the joy of his return was clouded by the shadow of his promise. He was now engaged to the witch's daughter, a young woman who was as beautiful on the outside as she was cold and cruel on the inside. The king was clever, though. He was deeply suspicious of the witch and her daughter and feared for his children's safety. He decided he had to protect them. Before bringing his new bride to the castle, he secretly took his 6 sons and his precious daughter to a hidden castle, deep and secluded within another part of the forest, where he hoped they would be safe from any harm. The new queen, the witch's daughter, soon arrived at the castle. Her beauty charmed everyone, but her heart was filled with jealousy and suspicion. She quickly noticed that the king was often gone for long periods, and she grew curious about his secret journeys. She used her mother's dark magic and her own cunning ways to discover the truth. She bribed servants with gold and promises until one of them revealed the king's secret, the hidden castle where he kept his 7 beloved children. A wicked idea began to form in her cruel mind. She did not want to share the king's love with anyone, especially not his children from before. Fueled by her wicked jealousy, the new queen began to craft a terrible plan. She learned the arts of dark magic from her mother, the witch. She spent her nights poring over ancient spell books, looking for a way to get rid of the king's children forever. She found a powerful and cruel spell, one that would not just harm them, but change them completely. She decided she would turn the 6 princes into animals so they could never claim the throne or their father's affection. With her plan ready, she sewed 6 small enchanted shirts. Each stitch was woven with dark magic and evil intent, designed to seal the boy's fate. One day, when the king was away on a royal journey, the queen took the 6 enchanted shirts and made her way to the hidden castle. The 6 princes, seeing who they thought was their new mother approaching, ran out to greet her, their hearts open and trusting. They had no idea of the terrible danger they were in. As they ran towards her, the evil queen threw the enchanted shirts over them. In a flash of magical light and a puff of smoke, the boys vanished. In their place, 6 magnificent white swans appeared. They let out cries of sorrow and confusion, their human voices gone, replaced by the mournful calls of the birds. The swans circled the castle once, their sad cries echoing in the air, and then flew away, over the forest and out of sight. The little princess, who had been watching from a window, saw everything. Her heart shattered into a million pieces. Her beloved brothers, her protectors and friends were gone, transformed by a wicked spell. Tears streamed down her face as she watched the swans disappear into the sky. She was now all alone in the hidden castle, her world of happiness and love destroyed by the queen's cruel magic. She felt a profound sadness, a deep and aching sorrow for the loss of her family. The young princess could not bear to stay in the hidden castle, a place that now held only memories of her lost brothers. That very night, under the light of the moon, she ran away. She fled into the deep, dark forest, searching for any sign of her beloved siblings. She called their names, but only the rustling leaves and the hooting of an owl answered her. She walked for days, her feet sore and her heart heavy with grief. All she could think about was finding her brothers and finding a way to break the terrible spell. Her love for them was a fire in her heart, giving her the strength to keep going even when she felt lost and alone. After a long and tiring search, she came upon a small hunter's hut deep within the woods. She went inside and found 6 small beds. Hope flickered within her. Could this be where her brothers were staying? She hid under one of the beds, waiting and watching. As the sun began to set, she heard the sound of rushing wings. 6 beautiful white swans flew in through the window. As soon as they touched the floor, their feathers fell away, and they became her 6 brothers once more. They could only be human for a short time each night, and then they had to become swans again. The reunion was filled with both joy and tears. The brothers were overjoyed to see their little sister, but they were also filled with sadness about their curse. They told her about their life as swans, flying across the land by day and only becoming human for a brief time at night. They explained that there was only one way to break the spell, but it was a task so difficult it seemed impossible. The sister listened carefully, her heart aching for them. She saw the pain in their eyes and knew without a doubt that she had to be the one to save them. Her decision was made in that moment, in the quiet of the little hut. The brothers told her the conditions of the cure. To break the spell, she would have to make 6 shirts for them out of special starflowers. But the task came with 2 terrible rules. For 6 long years, while she worked, she was not allowed to speak a single word. She also could not laugh. If she made even one sound, or if a single laugh escaped her lips, all her work would be for nothing, and her brothers would be lost forever. The task was daunting, a true test of will and love. Yet, looking at her brothers, the princess did not hesitate. She made a silent promise to them and to herself. She would do it. The very next morning, the princess began her impossible task. She left the hunter's hut and ventured deep into the forest to find the special flowers she needed. These were not ordinary flowers. They were starflowers, which bloomed only in the most remote and quiet places, their petals shimmering like starlight. She spent her days gathering them, her hands becoming scratched from thorns and her clothes torn from branches. It was lonely, difficult work. She had to be completely silent, a constant and heavy burden. Every sound of the forest, from a bird's song to a wolf's howl, was a reminder of the voice she could not use. She found a home for herself in the hollow of an old tree, a small and simple shelter against the wind and rain. There she began the painstaking process of turning the delicate starflowers into thread. She carefully crushed the petals and spun them into fine silvery strands. Then, with a needle she fashioned from a thorn, she started to knit. Stitch by stitch, shirt by shirt, she worked tirelessly. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. She never spoke, she never laughed. Her only companions were the forest creatures and the memory of her brothers' faces, which gave her the strength to continue her silent, solitary labor. Living alone in the woods was not easy. She faced hunger, cold, and fear. Sometimes wild animals would approach her little shelter, their eyes glowing in the dark, but the princess showed no fear. She would simply continue her work, her quiet determination seeming to calm even the wildest of beasts. They seemed to sense her purpose and her pure heart, and they left her in peace. The silence was the hardest part. There were times she desperately wanted to sing a song to lift her spirits or cry out in frustration, but she always remembered her promise. The thought of her brother's freedom was her shield against despair. 1 year passed, then 2, then 3. She finished the first shirt, a beautiful garment that shimmered like a piece of the night sky. Then she finished the second and the third. With each completed shirt, her hope grew stronger. She never saw her brothers during this time, as they were flying in faraway lands, but she could feel their presence in her heart. She knew they were counting on her. Her silent vow was a sacred bond between them. Her hands were often sore and tired, but her spirit remained unbroken. She was a silent guardian, weaving their salvation with threads of starlight and love. As the years passed in silence, the princess became a part of the forest. The birds would land on her shoulder, and the squirrels would eat from her hand. They were her silent friends in a world without words. Her task consumed her every waking moment. The pile of finished shirts grew slowly, each one a testament to her unwavering love and dedication. She had completed 4 shirts and was halfway through the 5th. The end of her 6-year vow was drawing closer, but the journey was far from over. Her silent life was about to be interrupted in a way she could never have imagined, bringing new challenges and new dangers. One day, the king of a neighboring land was out hunting with his men. They were deep in the forest when they saw a strange and beautiful sight. There, sitting in a clearing, was a young woman of incredible beauty, silently knitting. It was the princess. The king was completely captivated by her. He had never seen anyone so graceful and serene. He approached her and spoke to her, asking her name and where she came from. The princess simply looked at him with her kind eyes and shook her head, unable to answer because of her vow. She could not speak, not even to a king. The king was intrigued by her silence and her mysterious beauty. He was a good and gentle man, and he felt a powerful connection to her. He did not see her silence as strange, but as a part of her unique charm. He fell in love with her right there in the forest clearing. He asked her to come with him to his castle and be his queen. The princess was hesitant. She could not leave her work. Her promise to her brothers was everything, but the king was persistent and kind. He promised she could bring her starflowers and her knitting with her, and that she could continue her work in the castle. Seeing his gentle nature, she finally agreed with a simple nod. So the princess was taken from her quiet life in the forest to a grand and bustling castle. She became the new queen, adorned in silks and jewels. But even in her new royal life, she remained silent. She spent all her time in a small room, continuing her work on the starflower shirts. The king loved her deeply and respected her silent dedication. Even though he did not understand it, he trusted her completely. The people of the court, however, were not so understanding. They whispered about the silent queen, the strange girl from the woods who never spoke or smiled. Her silence made them suspicious and uneasy. Life in the new kingdom was a world away from the princess's solitary existence in the forest. She was now a queen, surrounded by luxury and servants who attended to her every need. She wore beautiful gowns instead of her simple, torn dress. She lived in a magnificent castle with high towers and sprawling gardens. The king was wonderfully kind to her, treating her with the utmost love and respect. He would sit with her for hours while she worked on her starflower shirts, telling her stories about his kingdom and his people. He never pressured her to speak, accepting her silence as part of who she was. His love was a small island of peace for her. Despite the king's kindness, the princess's heart was heavy. She was constantly aware of the passing time. The 6-year deadline was getting closer with every sunset. She worked with a quiet urgency, her fingers flying as she wove the starflower threads. She had now finished 5 shirts and was working on the 6th and final one. The pressure was immense. She missed her brothers terribly and worried constantly about whether she would finish in time. The life of a queen felt like a dream, but her reality was the promise she had made. The fate of her 6 brothers rested entirely on her silent, tireless hands. However, not everyone in the castle was as kind and trusting as the king. The king's mother was a stern and suspicious woman. She had disliked the silent girl from the woods from the very beginning. She could not understand why her son had married a commoner who refused to speak. She saw the new queen's silence not as a mystery, but as a sign of wickedness. She believed that the young queen was hiding a dark secret, perhaps that she was a witch or had some evil intentions. The old queen's heart was filled with jealousy and mistrust, and she watched the princess's every move, waiting for a chance to expose her. The old queen began to spread cruel rumors about the silent princess. She told the courtiers that the queen was practicing dark magic in her room, weaving evil spells instead of simple shirts. Because the princess could not speak to defend herself, the whispers and lies began to take root. The court, which had once been curious about her, now looked at her with fear and suspicion. The princess could feel their cold stares and hear their hushed, unkind words. She was all alone, unable to explain the truth. She could only continue her work and pray that she would finish before the old queen's hatred destroyed everything. The old queen's malice grew with each passing day. She was determined to turn her son, the king, against his silent wife. She began to devise a wicked plan to frame the princess for a terrible crime. The old queen knew that the king loved his wife dearly, so she needed to create a situation so horrific that even he could not ignore it. She waited for the perfect opportunity to strike, her heart as cold as stone. She watched the princess, who was now pregnant with her first child, and a truly evil idea formed in her mind. This, she thought, would be the final proof of the young queen's wickedness. When the princess gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, the king was overjoyed. But while the castle celebrated, the evil old queen crept into the nursery in the dead of night. She stole the newborn baby away, hiding him with a trusted servant far from the castle. Then she cruelly smeared blood on the sleeping princess's mouth to make it look as though she had committed an unspeakable act. When the king came to see his wife and child in the morning, his mother was there, pointing a trembling finger at the princess and accusing her of being a monster who had devoured her own child. The king was horrified. He could not believe what he was seeing. He loved his wife, but the evidence seemed undeniable. The court was in an uproar. Convinced that their silent queen was indeed a wicked witch, the princess stood before them, her heart breaking. She could not speak to tell them the truth, to cry out that she was innocent and that her baby had been stolen. Tears streamed down her face, but her silence was mistaken for guilt. Her vow sealed her lips, forcing her to endure the terrible accusations without a single word of defense. Her spirit was tested to its very limit. Despite his confusion and grief, the king's love for his wife was strong. He could not bring himself to believe she was capable of such a thing. He refused to condemn her immediately. However, the old queen was relentless. She performed this same evil act 2 more times when the princess gave birth to 2 more children, stealing them away and framing their mother. By the 3rd time, The king's council and the people of the kingdom demanded action. With the heaviest heart, the king had no choice but to agree. The silent queen was declared a witch and sentenced to be burned at the stake. The day of the princess's execution arrived. It was a dark and gloomy day, matching the sorrow in her heart. As she was led from her prison cell to the public square, she did not carry a prayer book or a cross. Instead, she clutched the 6 Starflower shirts in her arms. She'd finally finished them. All 6 were complete, except for the very last one, which was still missing its left sleeve. Time had run out. This was the last day of the 6 long years. Her only hope was that her brothers would come, that her sacrifice would not be in vain. She walked with quiet dignity, her eyes scanning the sky. As she stood before the pyre, the crowd jeered and called her a witch. The king stood nearby, his face pale with grief, turning away so he would not have to watch. The princess's heart was pounding. She looked up at the sky one last time, a silent prayer on her lips. Just as the guards were about to light the fire, a sound filled the air. It was the sound of powerful wings beating against the wind. Everyone looked up. There, flying towards them, were 6 magnificent white swans. They were flying faster than they had ever flown before, racing against the setting sun. The swans landed gracefully in the square right before their sister. A wave of relief washed over the princess. They had come. Without a moment's hesitation, she threw the 6 Starflower shirts over them. As the magical fabric touched their feathers, a brilliant light enveloped each bird. In an instant, the swans were gone, and in their place stood her 6 handsome brothers, returned to their human forms. The crowd gasped in astonishment. The transformation was almost perfect. 5 of the brothers were completely whole, but the youngest brother, whose shirt had been missing a sleeve, still had a white swan's wing instead of his left arm. Her vow was now fulfilled, and at last the princess could speak. Her voice, clear and strong after 6 years of silence, filled the square. She told everyone the whole story of the evil stepmother, the cruel curse, and the impossible task she had undertaken to save her family. She explained why she had to remain silent and why she could not defend herself against the false accusations. The king listened, his heart filling with both immense relief and terrible regret. He finally understood the depth of his wife's love and sacrifice. The truth so long hidden was now revealed for all to see. With the truth revealed, the king was overcome with remorse for ever doubting his brave and loving wife. He rushed to her side, embracing her and begging for her forgiveness. He then turned to his wicked mother. Her evil deeds were now exposed to the entire kingdom. The crowd that had once jeered at the princess now shouted for justice against the old queen. As the princess had explained the truth, she had also revealed where her 3 stolen children were hidden. The king immediately sent his most trusted guards to rescue them. The babies were brought back to the castle, safe and sound, and returned to their mother's loving arms. The reunion of the family was a moment of pure joy. The 6 brothers embraced their sister, thanking her for her incredible courage and sacrifice. They knew that she had endured years of hardship and loneliness all for them. The youngest brother looked at his swan wing not with sadness, but as a permanent reminder of his sister's unwavering love. The entire kingdom celebrated the return of the princes and the innocence of their noble queen. The evil old queen received her just punishment for her cruelty, and the darkness she had brought upon the royal family was finally banished forever by the light of truth and love. The king, the queen, their 3 children, and the 6 brothers returned to the castle as one big happy family. The halls that had been filled with suspicion and sorrow were now filled with laughter and joy once more. The story of the silent queen and her 6 swan brothers became a legend in the kingdom, a tale told to children for generations. It was a story that taught everyone about the incredible power of family love, the importance of keeping a promise, and the strength it takes to face challenges with courage. The family's bond, tested by dark magic and cruel lies, was now stronger than ever before. And so the tale of the 6 swans ends not with sadness, but with a powerful message of hope. It teaches us that true bravery isn't about fighting dragons, but about having the courage to stand by those you love, even when it is difficult. It shows that trust and kindness are stronger than any evil spell, and that a loving heart can overcome the greatest of obstacles. The sister's silent sacrifice saved her family and reminds us all that the most powerful magic in the world is the unwavering love we share with each other, a love that can truly conquer all.